At first glance, the new Gumball season feels like business as usual, full of the same absurd comedy that you'd expect. But look closer at 7 out of the 20 episodes and you'll find deep life lessons about burnout, body image, vulnerability, and even breaking cycles of family trauma, which is what we're covering today. Starting with The Distance, where Gumball and Darwin are forced into separate bedrooms. A simple housing arrangement that quickly turns into something much deeper when it becomes a test of survival. The setup is regular Gumball chaos. The boys have become so codependent that they're literally feeding each other breakfast and sharing water mouth to mouth, much to their families and our horror. But beneath the absurd comedy, there's some real themes shining through about separation anxiety that really hits when you're forced to grow up a little. When they're finally separated, Gumball quickly spirals, calling Darwin 24/7 because he can't be alone. It gets worse the moment Darwin says, "This thing isn't working out," during their gaming session.
Man, I'd love to, but I've got a lot of unpacking to do. But I could call back later though. Is that okay?
Sure.
But Darwin wasn't talking about the relationship at all. He was referring to the physical setup of his new room. While Gumball is busy catastrophizing and literally trashing Darwin's space, Darwin has been secretly building Gumball's Corner, a dedicated space for his brother to visit anytime.
That way you can stay over anytime you wanted.
The show is quietly exploring how our worst fears often blind us to the love that's actually there. The conflict peaks when Gumball reveals that his backup plan was all about framing them both for destruction of property so that they'd be sentenced to share a prison cell forever. It's completely unhinged, but Darwin calls it
That is
the most romantic thing I've ever heard.
a statement about the desperate lengths that we go to when we're terrified of losing someone. The episode understands that fear of abandonment can make us destructive, even when we're trying to protect what matters most to us. The resolution comes through honesty and reveals the episode's deeper wisdom. When your connection is genuine, it survives change. Once the misunderstanding clears up, their parents quickly decide the boys belong together for everyone's safety.
Hey, does that mean we can go back to sharing our room?
Yes, for the sake of everyone's safety, yes.
But both brothers have learned something crucial. Physical distance can't break emotional closeness. Sometimes the distance we're afraid of only exists in our heads, and trust is what lets relationships really grow stronger instead of just holding on tighter. The Wattersons learned that genuine connection survives change, but what happens when you're not even sure what that connection requires? And that's what the episode The Thing is all about. So it starts with Nicole's typical multitasking chaos by using Street Fighter moves to prepare dinner for Granny JoJo's visit.
wow. It really is amazing to watch Mom multitasking.
Yeah, I struggle with just tasking.
When she asks Richard not to forget the thing, his panic is immediate.
Right, sure, absolutely. The thing.
Which thing exactly?
You're stuck with a dilemma. Do you admit that you weren't listening, or do you pray you figure it out in the long run? The episode captures that specific dread where it's too late to ask what it was without looking foolish or uncaring. What follows is Richard's increasingly frantic day-long quest to remember the thing, helped by his kids and the discovery that he has taste-triggered photographic memory. Each food leads to a flashback. Hot dogs reveal shed cleaning failures. Pizza shows him making Nicole slip. Cupcakes expose his dessert gluttony. The emotional peak comes when Nicole tells Richard that she's not angry, she's disappointed. Words that hurt him just as badly. His breakdown is genuinely touching because underneath Richard's usual goofiness, we see a man terrified of letting down his wife.
I'm sorry, honey. Please don't be angry.
When he creates a mega memory mukbang and finally realizes the thing
Okay, what's the one secret ingredient that I'm missing?
was getting Granny JoJo from the bus stop. Ah, yes. Of course, that wasn't really the thing, and even as something as simple as picking up Granny is something Richard fails miserably at, leaving the kids stuck with Granny overnight at the bus stop. And then when coming home to tell Nicole the bad news, she couldn't be happier, and it's revealed that the thing was getting Granny and the kids out of her hair so that Nicole and Richard could have a peaceful dinner alone.
Oh, Richard, you remembered the thing! Why does dinner with your mother have to be so stressful?
What if I find a way to get her and the kids out of our hair and we have dinner? Just you and me.
The resolution reveals that relationships have their ups and downs, but you should really listen to your partner carefully and make them feel heard. And if you think that was the last lesson about family in the new season, You would be absolutely wrong. It's all about family. But this time, it's not about Gumball or Richard. It's about Anais, who's carrying a curse. But what curse, you may ask? Well, it starts simple enough, right? The family takes Anais to the doctor after noticing a wrinkle on her forehead. And the diagnosis is immediate.
Normally, I only see wrinkles like this in my patients going through a midlife crisis. Any recent electric skateboard purchases?
She's stressing too much from looking after everyone else. Each family disaster triggers another wrinkle in real time, like when Richard gets into a car accident just reaching for a cereal. The episode understands something profound about gifted kids. There's this curse of being the capable one in a chaotic family that often means becoming the emotional caretaker, and that responsibility can be a bit crushing. It makes Anais feel like a mother instead of a daughter. But that's where the episode gets clever. Anais doesn't just worry, she plans, because she is the genius after all. She unveils a 40-year strategy to fix everyone and her stress. She starts by sending Darwin to an assassin academy to toughen him up, getting Gumball a lawyer for his inevitable legal troubles, and shipping her parents to a ranch to prevent Nicole from snapping and killing Richard. It's the kind of hypervigilant planning that any perfectionist will recognize, the attempt to control every possible outcome. And of course, every plan backfires spectacularly. Darwin emerges from the badass assassin training as the unbreakable one, because his sweetness proved indestructible. A Gumball accidentally destroys a law office just by sighing, and Nicole still ends up beating Richard at the peaceful farm retreat. Each failure adds more wrinkles to Anais's face until she's practically melting from stress. Then, like always, there comes a solution. This time through Gumball's wisdom about embracing mistakes rather than preventing them. In a beautiful sequence, the animation shifts to Anais's childlike drawing style as the family sings about how their wrong choices led to their best outcomes.
If I'd stuck to the path that was laid for me, I'd still be living in the ocean without this family.
Darwin wouldn't be there if he'd stayed in the ocean. Nicole chose messy love over structured plans. And when Anais finally accepts that imperfection makes life interesting, her wrinkles disappear.
Every day's gonna be okay and help us grow.
But the episode has one final brilliant twist. As Anais vows to stop fixing everything, the rest of the family immediately develops wrinkles. The burden doesn't disappear, it just gets redistributed. That's some real truth about being the responsible one. When you share it, it goes to everyone else. Gumball acknowledges that someone has to care, but it doesn't have to be the 4-year-old genius carrying everyone alone, right? Something way different than the next lesson, which is that it all started with ass cheeks. Yep, you heard that right. So, in The Butts, Gumball wants to perform his poem about, well, butts at the school poetry recital.
It's about my butt.
Except when Gumball tries explaining that it's also about self-love and accepting who you are, Principal Brown immediately shuts it down. No poems, end of discussion.
Have a good day, Watterson.
There's something telling about how quickly Brown rejects it, though. This isn't his usual bumbling authority figure routine. He seems genuinely distressed. When Gumball presses the issue, Brown's reaction is intense. Way too intense for a poem about body parts. That's when Brown breaks down completely. This grown man starts crying to a student about something he's weird and gross about, something that he's been hiding for years. And if you guessed it was his butt, you're completely right.
I'm sorry, Watterson. It's just I have a problem with butts. My own, specifically.
Gumball's response to it all is just a promise to make sure that Brown will love himself the way that Gumball loves himself.
I can't let you suffer like this. I swear to help you love yourself.
What follows is a makeover montage involving a barbershop visit that turns into a hostage situation, flexing oil in front of the mirror, and confronting some childhood bullies, the root of it all. The mystery deepens when we learn that Brown wears a fake butt wig, this self-loathing about a part of his body that he thought was unacceptable because other people bullied him. There's no real big revelation. The climax comes with Principal Brown performing an epic rap on stage, backed by cheering students. The coolest principal around. He declares that he refuses to feel shame for the way that he was made, transforming his deepest embarrassment into empowerment. The crowd chants along, celebrating what he used to hide, his butt. He's also showing it and throwing his ass around in a loop, so it's an episode about how childhood cruelty can follow us into adulthood, creating shame so deep that we spend decades hiding parts of ourselves. And sometimes it takes someone else's unconditional support to help us see that even our most ridiculed parts deserve some love. Gumball's silly poem about butts becomes a rallying cry for self-acceptance, proving that healing old wounds can be both liberating and joyful. Who would have thought that self-clapping some butt cheeks had the power to resolve personal trauma? But the lessons get even more absurd. What if a lesson about breaking generational trauma started with Richard in a cheerleading outfit? The cheerleader kicks off when Gumball and Darwin are digging through their parents' stuff and find an old pink diary.
I love going through Mom and Dad's past when I'm bored. We always find a new chink in the armor.
They assume it's Nicole's, but really it's Richard's. In it, he talks about wanting to try out for the cheerleading team when he was young.
But I want to be like them, Mama. A flyer. It's my dream.
But he never did, because when little Richard showed up for the tryouts, his mother shut it down immediately.
Success doesn't run in the Watterson family. Cholesterol, on the other hand.
She planted a seed in his head.
Dreams are impossible, and desires are pointless.
Just like that, another kid learns that wanting to be and do something different makes you wrong. The episode gets a bit clever when Darwin looks inside Richard and finds what can only be described as monsters. We see that Richard's disappointment didn't start with him. It's his parents' crushing expectations that gave him his and their parents' before them, all the way back to cavemen clubbing their kids for having dreams. So the family decides to help Richard finally find a way to try out for cheerleading to break the cycle. What follows is a training montage of Richard getting launched off a construction crane, deflating a bounce castle, and basically destroying everything he touches while trying to build confidence.
I'm kind of expecting the bridge to...
But a quiet shift does happen. Anais gives him an emotional support teammate, and Richard's stoked for the actual tryouts. But at those tryouts is when he's hit with a plot twist. Richard spots Granny JoJo in the audience. She's there because she likes going to sporting tryouts to see people fail and feel better about herself. When she crushes his confidence again by pointing out that his emotional support teammate, Alexandria, is just a tennis ball, Richard completely shuts down. So his family steps in with their own chant, telling him that they believe in him. Richard pushes through decades of "you can't do that" to perform a routine so spectacular that it shatters every window in the school. The lesson is that sometimes breaking generational trauma means that one person in the family finally says, "I'm gonna try the thing that they told me I couldn't do," and that they make sure that that trauma is not passed on to the next generation. Speaking of trying things that might end a bit badly though, Darwin has written Carrie a love letter. This sounds sweet until you remember that Carrie is a ghost, and Darwin has no idea how ghosts actually work. Does anyone really? The episode starts with Darwin practically floating on air because he's so excited to surprise Carrie with this romantic gesture.
I wrote Carrie a super romantic love letter, and I'm about to slip it in her locker today to surprise her.
He's written her a super romantic love letter and plans to slip it into her locker. Gumball immediately thinks this sounds dangerous, but Darwin goes for it anyway.
That sounds dangerous, dude. Kinda like opening a vampire's coffin to present them with your beating heart and, I don't know, expect to make out.
Then Penny and Carrie show up, and while Gumball and Penny are doing their usual nauseating couple thing, rubbing faces and saying how much they missed each other, Carrie makes it very clear that she finds romantic gestures cringy and gross, and that she and Darwin work well because he's not some mewling puddle of mush.
It's really nerdy and gross. That's why me and Darwin work so well, because he's not some mewling puddle of mush.
Except that that's exactly what Darwin made himself with this letter that he was about to give her. When Gumball nervously asks what Carrie would think if someone told her that they loved her in a cutesy way, she completely loses it. She possesses Gumball and drags him across the lockers, warning that no one should tell a ghost that they love them because the dead are deprived of love. And now Darwin realizes that they have a problem.
We gotta get that letter back.
The letter is already in her backpack, and it's written on paper from a demonic book that Carrie gave him from Valentine's Day, which means that it's actually basically indestructible. What follows is increasingly desperate attempts to get the letter back. Gumball gets eaten by Carrie's living backpack. The letter refuses to tear because it's made from cursed paper. They try multiple schemes that all backfire spectacularly. So how do they do it? Well, the resolution is perfect in its simplicity, as they're unable to tear the letter, right? So shit goes down and Carrie goes into her rage mode. But Darwin doesn't try to explain or apologize. Instead, he tells her to eat his face.
Eat my face.
Which works as it spirals Carrie into possessing Gumball and kissing Darwin. But why? Well, because Carrie appreciates that Darwin's meeting her where she is instead of forcing her to be something that she's not. The episode understands that real love is about paying attention to what the other person actually tells you they need. Darwin spent the whole episode trying to give Carrie something that would make him feel good about being a boyfriend, the romantic letter, something that would be very sweet to a lot of people. But not Carrie. What Carrie needed was someone who understood that she experiences affection differently. Which only leaves the last episode and its lesson, which was a lot more surprising, to be honest. The burger starts innocent enough. After a particularly traumatic health class where Miss Simeon uses Mr. Small as a human anatomy model to demonstrate what junk food does to your heart, Gumball and Darwin decide to eat healthier. And surprisingly, the duo does decide to try to find healthy food. But then something weird starts happening. The Health and Greens restaurant turns out to be directly connected to Joyful Burger, and their salads are just deconstructed burgers. So they turn to sport drinks. Sports should be good for you, so the drinks should be according to their reasoning, right? Then they discover that everything is filled with chemicals or preservatives, so that's when they try to turn to organic produce. Then they're just checking the vegetables and fruits' freshness, similar to all the people we see in the local supermarkets. But Larry has got another surprise coming. He looks at all their purchases. He declares that it'll be $3,078.99 for basic fruits and vegetables. And up until now, that was actually pretty accurate to the real world, right? It's gonna go more than that, though. And with everything going on, they decide to grow their own food instead of buying it. A little time passes, and they're getting dangerously skinny because they haven't been eating as much. But finally, they have a beautiful organic garden, which is then shut down by Larry because his manager, Mr. Bilderberger, owns the copyrights to the seeds that they used. And that's when we meet the real villain, Mr. Bilderberger, finally. A talking hamburger with googly eyes who breaks into a villain song about how he profits off of his customers' stupidity and eagerness to eat Joyful Burger, no matter how unhealthy it actually is. Sound familiar? The song is both hilarious and genuinely unsettling as he explains exactly how the system really works. He's rich and completely disconnected from society, so he'll gladly burn it all down in the pursuit of money. I'm getting a theme this season. And it's not exactly subtle here. This episode doesn't pretend that individual consumer choices can fix systemic problems. When every option is controlled by the same corporation or group of corporations, voting with your wallet really becomes meaningless. The episode doesn't offer any real answers because sometimes there aren't any. Just a lesson about your circle of influence and how the world works. What makes this season of Gumball special isn't just that it tackles some pretty serious issues. It's how it refuses to kind of dumb them down, even when it uses its trademark humor. The distance doesn't end with everything being perfect between Gumball and Darwin. The wrinkle doesn't magically cure Anais's anxiety. The cheerleader doesn't really erase generations of family dysfunction. Instead, these episodes show us something more realistic. Small moments of progress. People learning to trust each other. Families choosing to break harmful patterns. People just figuring out how to support each other without fixing each other. The show respects its audience enough to acknowledge that growing up is complicated, that systems can be rigged, and that the things we're told will make us happy often don't. But it also suggests that connection is possible, that change happens one weird conversation at a time. Maybe that's why these episodes work so well. Like, they're not trying to teach us lessons or give us answers explicitly. They're just showing us characters figuring out how to be human, or animals, or something, in a world that often doesn't make sense. Which is pretty much what we're all doing anyway, with significantly less property damage. Though the property damage part might just be a matter of perspective.